Welcome to the Hewlett-Packard Enterprise Around the Storage Block video blog. I'm your host, HPE Storage Guy Calvin Zito. At VMworld 2017, Matt Miller from our Nimble Storage team did a booth session that was about 10 minutes long, taking a look at the Converged Architecture 700 with Nimble Storage. Since this is a new solution, I thought it'd be worth sharing this session with you. So here's the session with Matt.
Thank you guys for joining us. My name is Matt Miller. I'm on the product marketing team at Nimble Storage. We're going to talk to you today about predictive infrastructure with Nimble and HPE. So what does that actually mean? We'll talk about that. Before we get into the actual particulars, we want to talk about digital transformation. That's a big hot topic these days. That's what a lot of companies are going through. More and more they're relying on your applications to drive your business forward. So companies like Airbnb and Uber are obvious ones. They kind of were born in this digital age. But even some traditional businesses like Starbucks, Adobe, have really transformed their customer experience through the use of applications. Starbucks is an example. 22% of their business now goes through their app before you even get into their store. Adobe's another one. 10 years ago, they were selling software licenses. They were a software company. Now, most of their revenue comes from providing their software as a service. So they're now a service provider. So they've really completely transformed the way that their customers consume their products. So this transformation that we're going through is of utmost performance if you really want to stay competitive. The problem is that with these applications, they're becoming more and more pervasive. We all go through this. This waiting for data to load, you get frustrated. It happens to us in our personal lives. But when it happens in a business, it becomes magnified by 1,000. If you're staking your business strategy and your business goals towards this digital transformation and your application data isn't being delivered when it needs to, it's really impacting your bottom line. So I came from Nimble Storage, and we refer to this phenomenon as the app data gap. So it's really the gap between when your application needs its data and when it actually gets delivered. And we want that gap to be as narrow as possible. So what causes this phenomenon? So on the left-hand side, you can see kind of your standard infrastructure stack. You've got your VMs running applications with your servers, network, and storage. All of these contribute to the app data gap. So a lot of times storage gets blamed for things, but in most cases, it's something outside of the storage realm. So it's configuration issues. It's best practices not being followed. Things of that nature. So everything helps to impact that app data gap. So what are some customers looking towards to help simplify this problem and solve this problem is converged systems. So they want vendors to actually do the testing and validation of all of that stack ahead of time so that it reduces the risk of deploying it in their own infrastructure. So they don't actually have to assemble the puzzle and see what happens. They want the vendor to do that. So converged systems have been around for a long time. Many vendors have solutions out there. HPE has their solution, which we'll talk about in a second, and now we have one with Nimble Storage. So that is called the HPE Converged Architecture 700. So this really helps you deploy your infrastructure faster because we give you that pre-tested, pre-validated recipe for deploying application infrastructure. It simplifies IT operations. It reduces the complexity of having to assemble all those puzzle pieces together. Instead, it gives you a pre-tested and validated solution. It's much simpler to implement. So what does Nimble Storage bring to the table now that we're part of the HPE family? So we have a solution with HPE servers and networking plus Nimble Storage. We bring two things: the power of predictive analytics. So we have something called our InfoSight Analytics Engine that predicts and prevents issues across not only the storage piece, but also the entire infrastructure stack. So you can, 9 times out of 10, almost 9 out of 10 issues can be resolved proactively and in an automated fashion. So think about your administrators not having to call into a support center for 9 out of 10 issues. Think of how much time that's going to save. And that's really the power of the analytics that Nimble has implemented in its solution. Radically simple. So Nimble is fundamentally a simpler platform to manage than some of the traditional architectures that are out there. We had the benefit of having a clean sheet of paper back in 2010 as a new storage company to design a storage platform that you actually would want to have. It's everything from initial acquisition to installation to everyday management is just dead simple. It works. And a lot of it is related to the predictive analytics nature of it. So you have somebody, an analytics engine that's kind of watching over things for you, so you don't have to constantly keep an eye on it and keep it tuned and whatnot. So those two things are what Nimble brings to the table from a converged architecture standpoint. So you've heard about Gen 10 servers. So all of these offerings under the converged architecture umbrella will very shortly be powered by Gen 10 servers. You can find out about those right behind us over here. So if you haven't checked those out, very big launch that just happened a couple of months ago. But if I go back to the predictive analytics nature of what Nimble brings to the table, I'll just highlight one feature and capability that we have that's specific to VMware environments. It's what we call VM Vision. So the InfoSight engine will actually collect data from the VMware environment and correlate that with everything else that it collects from the host, the network, and the storage. And we'll apply machine learning algorithms to that and correlate that and give you an idea of what's happening within your VM. It'll tell you that there's a latency issue, but it doesn't just tell you that there's latency. There's a lot of tools out there that will give you a pretty chart and say, okay, there's a problem here. It's got to go further than that, and that's what InfoSight can do. It can actually break down that latency and say where it's actually coming from in the stack. So there's this latency spike right here. You can see the different colors will show you exactly where that latency is coming from. And then on a per VM basis, you can go then and investigate that even further. And you can say, you know what, there's a VM that's running in my VDI implementation that's hogging up a lot of resources. And then you can take remedial action, whether it's vMotioning off to a different area that's got more resources, or just solving that issue. But all of this happens instantaneously. There's no correlating spreadsheets and hours or days of consulting services to figure out what's happening. This all gets done in real time through the InfoSight engine. Another example of how InfoSight doesn't just give you data, it gives you actual information that you can use. So if it detects a latency spike in a workload, it will look at the characteristics of that workload and say, okay, this is a backup job. There is a latency issue, but it's not going to impact your business. It's going to give you an impact severity scale, and it's going to say that's low because that's a backup. It's a backup job. You don't need, super low latency for that. So it reads the context of what is happening in your environment and gives you a recommendation on, how it's going to impact it, whether it's a high impact, whether it's a low impact. So again, another example of how analytics can help simplify things and help you manage infrastructure a lot smoother. And I'll just say before I kind of wrap up here, InfoSight comes with your Nimble storage support contract. So this is not a high-priced software analytics tool that you have to purchase separately or manage separately. It's all cloud-based and comes at no extra charge. At Nimble, we've had a policy from day one. We don't charge for any software features at all. So this is a very powerful tool that you have that just comes with the array. So let me wrap up. You can get more information. We are over at the Nimble side of the booth over there in the back corner. So please come talk to us. We have a converged rack over there so you can actually see and touch the hardware. It's always cool to see the little blinky lights. And if you want more information, we're either on the Nimble Storage website or the HPE website. So with that, I will wrap it up.
Always love hearing from you on Twitter, where you can find me as Calvin Zito. Our blog is at hpe.com/storage/blog. Until next time, thanks for joining me.